Welcome to the Patrick Real Estate Show, where we explore the fascinating world of real estate investing with your host, Patrick Switek. Patrick is a dynamic young entrepreneur and an accomplished real estate investor who's passionate about helping others achieve financial freedom. Each week, we sit down with some of the most inspiring individuals in the real estate industry and delve into their personal journeys, lessons learned, and secrets to their success. Let's dive into this week's episode.
Steph Weber, welcome to the Patrick Real Estate Show.
Thank you so much.
The people that don't know her, for people that don't know her, she is an expert in all things marketing. She's well known for her understanding in marketing across the board, not only on a co-host property management level, but also on a per house branding level. How do you get guests to continue to come back? How do you do paid marketing? How do you create brands that allow you to not have to even pay for ads to get people to come back? So it's like the whole holistic view of branding, marketing, and all that. She's an expert in all that. She also is a part owner in and visionary in Cabins on the Cumberland, which is something really cool. It's a micro resort. She's going to talk about that as well. But she's built an impressive portfolio of 14 co-host clients, and she continues to serve her clients in design, marketing, and all things entrepreneurship. But without further ado, Steph, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm absolutely honored to be here. I was just listening to your show actually before we hopped on here today. All things co-hosting, that's where my head is right now. So I'm excited to chat today and to dive in.
Awesome. Yeah, let's get started. How did Steph even get like a taste of short-term rentals to begin with? What was Steph doing before that?
So let me give you the shortened version of this story. It really starts with a decade-long career in the fashion industry, Patrick. When I was 17, my parents had a small business, unfortunately filed bankruptcy, forced our family into personal bankruptcy. I was getting ready to go to college and they were, listen, if you're going to go to school, that's great, but you're doing it on your own. Like, we don't have money to be able to send you and you're going to have to financially figure it out. So at age 18, basically I was financially on my own. I worked 3 different jobs to put myself through school, any 3 different jobs at one time while also being a full-time student. It was absolute insanity, but it was good. I learned a lot. But one of those was with a small locally owned and operated boutique here in Indianapolis, where I currently live. In that, I had the opportunity to become their brand manager. I went to school for PR and advertising, so I handled their branding, their marketing efforts. I also handled their general management, helped them open another store. I also did buying for them. So as is typical in a small business, I wore a lot of different hats. In that, we started working with influencers. So we were paying influencers to promote our clothing and so forth. And I thought, I can do this. So I developed the brand Trendy and Indie, and that's really where my entrepreneurial journey started. So I was an influencer. I was in the fashion and travel space. So I had a number of different hotel collaborations as well in Napa, in Europe, in Nantucket. I was just talking about this today, actually, on social media. And I got to a place with that, Patrick, where I said, this is really cool and I enjoy what I'm doing. But what I'm really finding is when I'm working with a small business or I'm working with a hotel, it is my zone of genius to be able to figure out their brand and to convey their brand story. And I'm really good at doing that. And the question that I would consistently ask small businesses and entrepreneurs that I was supporting and trying to promote their businesses and their products was, tell me about your story. Tell me what makes you different. What separates you from the boutique down the street? Why should somebody choose to stay with you at this hotel over the other hotels that they have to choose from in the area? And when I asked that question, there was always hesitancy. Oh, good question. Okay, we might have our unique statement about what makes us different or what separates us in this market. But when we're really thinking about our story and the emotional connection, that's the brand. And so then I started doing brand consulting and marketing. And long story short, I abolished Trendy and Indie. May it live forever in my heart. And I quickly became the Weber Co. And so we have done coaching, we have done agency model, we've done everything, but it always comes back to branding and organic marketing. And so I built a 7-figure business without paid ads. And I'm very proud of that through everything that we've done. And that's what I've taught small businesses and entrepreneurs to do as well. I have wanted to get into short-term rentals, honestly, Patrick, since my husband and I got married 8 years ago, and we joked about starting a B&B. And in 2023, I was 8 months pregnant and thought, now's a great time to get into this. So let's go. So we purchased our first property here in Indianapolis. We went out to dinner with our real estate agent and I said, we also want to start managing. Like, I can do this for other people. And she was like, tell me more. And then that is how we quickly grew our co-hosting business as well. So we built a 6-figure co-hosting business in 10 months period of time, which was wild, also with a newborn and a toddler. During that time also, we had talked a little bit about our big vision. And I actually shared this on social media in April of 2023 when all of this was coming to life. Our big vision was to have a piece of land and to be able to put multiple units on it to truly create a destination property, a vacation area where families could come year after year, have an arcade game space, host events, host retreats, host weddings, so on and so forth. And that opportunity presented itself in July of 2023. And we were signing on the dotted line with 3 other couples on December 31st, actually, of 2023 for that deal. We currently have 3 cabins that are live that have had guests in them since June of this year, which is amazing. And we have 3 more coming yet in September. And then we'll have 11 total when all said and done in an event venue and full arcade game area. It's going to be awesome.
Wow.
So quick growth, lots of things changed in a quick period of time for me, but I truly do believe that a lot of my success in this space has been because of my branding and marketing background.
That's awesome. I think branding and marketing is one of the most important concepts in this space. And I think people overlook that. There's revenue management, there's building an incredible home, so design, whatever. And then there's marketing and listing management and all that kind of stuff. So I love that you come on and we're going to unpack some things because you did mention a lot of things. So we're going to start going backwards and let's start unpacking some of those things. The first thing I want to say is the branding and marketing. Like, what's different for your boutique hotel versus somebody else's? In your case, for the cabins on the Cumberland, what is the big difference for you guys? How did you position your brand? Maybe walk us through how you did the marketing for that.
First and foremost, anytime I'm working with a small business owner, short-term rental owner, boutique hotel, really doesn't matter. It has to start with your ideal target audience, your ideal guest avatar, your avatar. You've heard a lot of different terms probably to describe who this is. But it's not just about what's the demographic information. I think oftentimes when people hear this, it's, a family of 4, they're upper middle class, they're in their 30s or like whatever it may be. Okay, that demographic information paints a small little picture of who this person, this ideal target audience might be for you. But it's so much deeper than that. And it really comes down to identifying what their core pain points are, what the gap is, what they're experiencing, and what it is that they truly desire. And so for us, we knew that in our specific little market, first of all, there are a lot of cabins near the Lake Cumberland area. There's not a lot of great cabins. And there's just...
Which area is this?
It's in Jamestown, Kentucky, and it's near Lake Cumberland, which actually Lake Cumberland is one of the largest lakes in the United States. It's massive. It's absolutely massive. But there's
Lake Michigan? Bigger than Lake
Michigan?
Michigan?
It's not. But it's huge. They're actually doing like a whole wayfair or a whole wayfinding project
Cool.
On the lake because people get lost all the time because of how big it is. I'm like, don't ask me how to find your way back. I just know where we're located. But anyway, so for us, we knew that families were really number one, like in terms of core pain points. They're not just looking for a clean space. Obviously, that's a given, right? You have to have that. But what we knew about our families is that they had kiddos that were likely in early elementary, potentially middle school. So what are kids experiencing during that time? Kids are running 1,000,000 miles a minute, and so are the parents. And so oftentimes in their day-to-day life, families are starting to feel a little bit disconnected, and kids are here, there, and everywhere. We wanted to create a space where families could truly come, and it's like their new vacation destination. Year after year, this is where they come back to. The kids are excited. They're all excited to be able to just reconnect as a family and create these memories that last a lifetime. So we really wanted to instill that in what we were building. So we knew their core pain point that we were really focusing on was this disconnection that they're feeling in their family unit. We knew that the gap was they don't have a lot of great spaces where it's choose your own adventure, right? It's one thing to have a cabin and to have beautiful lakefront views. Like that's great. But at our cabins, we have our private boat ramp. So parents can go out and fish in the morning if they want to. Kids can go down to the private boat ramp and fish off of the ramp. We'll also have our indoor arcade space. So if parents want to have some alone time and just hang out, they can send the kids over to the arcade room area or whatever. We're also going to have a pickleball court. So there's going to be a lot to do. So it's truly like a choose your own adventure destination where you can come and you really don't have to leave if you don't want to. And it truly becomes a destination in and of itself. So we wanted to fill that gap, especially in that market. And again, we really wanted families to be able to come back year after year. We knew that, especially like families who are looking for a place to just call their home, away from home for those vacations, we knew that was one of their core desires. And again, to create a space of reconnection too. So that's what we were focused on. So really identifying your avatar is the first step in really understanding your brand and the messaging you're crafting.
Awesome. So you establish an avatar. I always talk about that as well, right? Like people in Joshua Tree, for example, the kind of people that come in town are usually people that want to relax, want to be outside, want to just be in nature. And so, buying a property in a town doesn't work. Buying an acreage works. Having a really nice backyard works with a lot of things to do inside. Having a really nicely done house is okay, but it's not going to be enough, right? You need to have those amenities in the backyard because that's what people are doing. They're going to be outside. They're going to be relaxing. It's R&R or relax and unwind. Yeah. I don't know. Whatever. They're just going to relax. And, anything you could do, like a sauna, hot tub, pool, that kind of stuff. Anyways, I think that understanding that guest avatar and what they're there for, it helps you build the product. Now, let's say in your situation, what's the next step for that? Do you do branding with logos, just what's the positioning with that?
Absolutely. So for me, Patrick, anytime that I'm trying to explain branding, I always say your logos honestly should come last. Like your visuals should absolutely come last. Identifying your core guest avatar is first. And typically when I'm doing this with short-term rental owners, we come up with 3 avatars. So we have one that's our core that we're focusing on specifically for all marketing efforts. And then we have 2 that are like our sub avatars. So I'll use us for the cabins as an example here. We knew that our core avatar was going to be these families that had kiddos that were the age demographic of that elementary age or early middle school age is our core. And that's where we wanted to start. We want to capture them at that age so that they'll come back as the kids grow, right? That's our goal. And then we also knew because of our river that fishermen were going to be a huge target audience for us. So they're one of our sub audiences, of course. And then we also knew that couples, just strictly couples, were going to be another sub audience for us, like couples getaways, couples retreats. And some of this is also like seasonally dependent. I was just chatting with my husband the other day and he was like, you should do like a huge Valentine's Day promotion for the cabins. I was like, I'm already on it. Like we're already on the same wavelength. So that's that. Once you've nailed that, then it's into your messaging. And in terms of brand messaging and brand strategy, this is like mission, vision, core values. It's your differentiating factors. It's your positioning statement, like how you're uniquely positioning yourself in the market. It's your tagline. It's anything that you want to create that emotional connection with your ideal target audience. And so that's what it comes down to. Like branding is emotional and we have to keep that in mind. So we have to use language that our avatar might use. We have to use language that they're going to remember, that's recognizable, that's memorable, that they can actually recall, because that's where brand loyalty is created. And that's what we're working to do through the process of branding. Once we've done that, then we move into the visuals, because the visuals have to be representative of the messaging and of the story that we're trying to tell. And that's the other big component here, right? Is what's the brand story that you're trying to share? And that story is what has to be conveyed through all of your marketing materials as well.
Got it. And so the materials, all that, in this case with the cabins, what are those materials look like and what did you guys come up with?
So I come back to our tagline often. And so our tagline is your family's new getaway tradition. So we really wanted to instill this idea of, number one, we're becoming a tradition for you. So you're coming back to us year after year, already instilling the idea of repeat guests, right? We wanted to position that and position it effectively in their minds. We also, our one-liner statement is a secluded riverfront retreat, just 20 minutes from Lake Cumberland. So we're instilling a few things there. Number one is that it's secluded. It feels very private. And so those families that are looking for this sort of escape from their everyday reality, that word resonates with them. Riverfront retreat. Okay. Obviously, this is very effective to where we're positioned. So we have riverfront property, which is rare, honestly, down in that area. And then we wanted to instill, like I said earlier, the tradition component. So a few different pieces of our language that we're reflecting in that. So from a brand visuals and marketing perspective, obviously we're showing what you can do at the cabins, but thinking about the narrative that we're showing, right? So we want to show families having a great time down at the cabins. We want to show what you can actually do. We want to show fishermen dropping boats in on our private river, which if you go to our Instagram account, you will now see, because we just did our first lifestyle branded photo shoot, which was phenomenal. So you're going to see all of that reflected in our messaging. And that, again, like this comes back to where are you marketing and how are you hitting that target audience? That's why that component is also so important. Where is that target audience hanging out? For us, they're hanging out for sure on Instagram, also likely on TikTok, and then also in Facebook groups. And we're really right now focusing on Instagram and Facebook groups as our two like primary sources of, I'm going to say, the first step of marketing, which is like, how are people actually becoming aware of you? And then email marketing, of course, for past guests and potential guests. But that's like a whole another conversation that we can continue to get into if you would like to do, Patrick. But
Yeah,
that's like how we're doing it all together.
Got it. So let's break down the listing, right? Like you're going to have to portray a way how you want to represent the property on Airbnb, on the website, on other platforms. This is something that I do in my business. I'm curious like how you would consult people on how they should go about doing that. In our business, just so you understand stuff and what we do, is branding is a huge part of we already know the demographic and who these people are. They're going to be at these properties. Depending on the size of the property, we have different kind of guest avatar like in mind. And then we see the properties, like we take what the property is and we build a story around it. So like for us, like we'll go in, for example, let's take one of my properties called Bijou. Bijou is a cute little property that we took. We bought it for $334,000. We put around $100,000 into it. It was like this 1-bedroom property, and we made it super cute where we just decked it out. We got a really good designer in there that made like all these natural elements inside. It's like these patio doors that open up to like your own little patio, and like you're sitting at the patio drinking your coffee in the morning, and it's like secluded, and there's like boulders in the backyard, and there's a deck that's multiple layers built into the boulders with there's like a shower head coming out of the rock, right? And so like you feel like you're in nature, you feel secluded, you're relaxed, and so there's a hammock there. It's like the perfect mix of everything. And so now we have this product, right? We built this product. Now we have to brand this product. So now we have to think about, okay, well, who's going to come there? It's going to be a couple, right? A couple comes there. They're going to love their stay. They're going to enjoy their stay. Now we got to paint that picture for people. For us, we build that through influencer marketing and when I say influencer marketing, I'm saying we don't bring people out there to try to influence and try to grow from okay, let me advertise this to my audience, but more so from a content perspective. I want them to provide me great content of them utilizing the space in a way that couples would utilize the space to actually help people visualize and create a story around the listing so that people invoke that emotion and then buy into it. I don't know, but I want to ask you how you go about that process with short-term rental, like at that point, like positioning the listing and doing all that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think for many of you who are listening, if you have scaled your portfolio, if you are building some kind of boutique hotel or whatever it may be, you probably are to a stage in your business where you really are focused more on maybe the direct booking side of things, or you're really working to grow and have more control over your brand and over the business that you are building. However, that being said, the platforms are always, like the OTAs are always going to have their place for our businesses because obviously they're a huge way that we are attracting guests to our property. One of the things that I like to remind short-term rental owners of is that when a guest is searching for a place to go, for our guests who are searching for Lake Cumberland, they start flipping through photos. They're not just looking for a pretty place to stay. What they're doing is they're actually telling themselves the story of what it's going to be like to stay at that property. So they're seeing pictures of where they are going to drink their morning coffee. They're seeing photos of our private boat ramp where they're going to drop their fishing boat and their son is going to catch their first fish. That was actually one of our first guests sent us a photo and was like, my son caught his first trout off your private boat ramp this morning. This was crazy. So they're telling themselves what that story is going to be like, envisioning, again, what it is that they desire, what it is that they want out of that vacation, that getaway, whatever it might be. And that's what's happening when they're going through your listing photos. So your listing photos have to be representative of that story, of that narrative that your guests are of what they're going to experience essentially when they come to stay.
Yeah. Steph, I'm curious on your opinion, going off of the story, right? I'm curious on your opinion on rooms and spaces. and how they automatically put everything in its own category?
So
Because I have an opinion. I'm
I have a
curious to hear.
love-hate relationship with it, Patrick. I like
Okay.
it from the perspective of I'm someone who's like super type A and super organized. So from a guest perspective, when I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, like I can see what room I want to sleep in if it's a group trip that we're going in. So from an organization perspective, I think it works. I think from the story and the narrative perspective, you just have to be very strategic about how you're doing it and how you're leveraging it. And I still think too, like when guests are scrolling on Airbnb, they're going through those first like 5 to 7 photos, and right away they're like, yes, this is a place that I'm adding to my wish list and I'm going to come back to, and I'm making my decision about where I want to stay. So again, I think you have to do a great job at telling the story of each room in the space. And so that's like where this comes into play. But listen, you guys, this is like another prime example of Airbnb is going to continue to keep us all on our toes. And kudos to Airbnb. They've done an amazing job at building their brand. I think I shared this on another podcast that I was on. Whenever you're talking to a friend and they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, we rented this great Airbnb. Oh my gosh, we went to Michigan. We stayed at this great Airbnb. That's what they're saying. Or they're going, you won't believe the Airbnb experience we just had. I literally have a text from a friend that says that right now. Okay, Airbnb's done an awesome job building their brand. But what's important for you as a short-term rental owner is that you are now taking ownership for your own brand. And instead of that, like I want people to say, oh my gosh, you've got to stay at Cabins on the Cumberland. It was the best experience we've ever had when we visited Lake Cumberland. That's what I want to hear. So that's a shift in that narrative too. But to the point about like our listing and how we're conveying this story, this is why it's important to brand your property. And this is why, especially if you're doing direct booking, it's important to have a photo of the sign that has your property name on it or in it or whatever. Or it's important to show the koozies that you've made or the coffee cups, right? So when I'm working with a client who's coming to us actually for design, because we do this as well, we're going, okay, and where can we create branded moments throughout your guest experience that are going to be photographed in your property that now become part of your listing, right? So your guests are seeing it there. And then your guests are also likely seeing this in your listing description. So like when you go to our listings for the cabins or for any of our co-hosted properties for that matter, you're going to see, welcome to Cabin for the Woodlands at Cabins on the Cumberland, right? So you will actually see that. And now if you go in Google search, we're going to appear in search results for that. So again, like all of this comes back to guests are getting more and more savvy, and we have to keep that in mind. I also think it's on us to educate our guests a little bit, right? Obviously, like we have to abide by Airbnb's terms and conditions, and we are super respectful of that because we are very thankful for Airbnb and VRBO, these platforms that help guests find us and find out about all these amazing places to stay. But it's up to us as short-term rental owners or boutique hotel owners or whatever to make sure that we're doing the job of keeping our brand top of mind the next time that guest is making a booking decision.
Absolutely. And that's like why in our business, we started adding like in the Airbnb title, or just in general, the title across all platforms, the name of the property. We name every single property. We give a personality to every property, and then we build a story around that through the description, through the pictures and everything. We get a set of photos from our main photographer, and then we get multiple sets of photos from influencers. And we take everything like a movie edit, and then we cut it down, and then there's our story, right? So it takes time to build those. But every time that we launch a property like that property, the listing, the effort that we put into the listing and all the work that we're talking about on this podcast, all the work up front, you have the listing for life, right? Or for years to come. And it's going to keep producing you money. And so the difference between being lazy and just putting it up and just putting a couple iPhone photos together versus getting a professional photographer, getting influencers in, showcasing how the space works. Steph, you're going to love this. But for us, for each influencer comes in, we have branded guidelines of like exactly how they should shoot the photos when they're at the house. So we're like, do not break any rules. These are the things we don't like. Here's the things that we like. And so we'll talk, okay, please don't break the rules and have glass near the jacuzzi. Please don't look at the camera like this because it's fucking creepy and I don't want to see that. Show yourself in the moment, experiencing the place. For example, we have for one of our properties, I wish I could show visually, but there's a girl playing guitar next to a fire pit, and then there's two friends nearby, and it's just cool. It just feels, oh man, it's so spiritual and out in the open, and this is so cool. This is good energy, right? So or a sunken living room couch is like cool, but like when you see people like hanging out and like actually interacting in that space, it actually looks a lot more visual of, oh, I didn't think about that, but that's cool. And what's funny stuff with branding, people want pools, for example, and then most times they won't use the pools. They'll be like envisioning this, oh my God, I'm gonna use the pool and it's gonna be so magical and like my kids and whatever, and we're gonna be swimming around. They're never near the pool. And it's crazy. But anyways.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, Patrick, like something that you're speaking to that I think is important for your listeners to hear, and something that I think we're going to start to see more and more of, specifically, I think it'll start on Airbnb listings, but it's more lifestyle photos. It's more like photos that are actually telling the story. It's been in the past, go have a photographer take these beautiful photos of like your space without people in them or without staging. I'm going to use that term a little bit loosely here, but like without showing the wine glasses or like the charcuterie board or the stage dining table or like whatever it may be. I think we're going to see a shift in incorporating more of those lifestyle photos into the listings to help better tell and represent the story that we are trying to convey. And that is going to be one way to help start to differentiate your listing on Airbnb. In my opinion, I'm testing this right now with our cabins, and I wanted to do a little bit of my own data and research on this to see if my theory is true. We're seeing it more and more, especially in the design space even too. And something that I tell short-term rental owners when we're working on branding, we're working on their marketing, so many want to use social media as a means to try to attract guests to their property and increase their direct bookings. And so I often have people say, all right, Steph, if we do all this social media strategy, like how long will it take me to see results? I'm like, you're starting at zero. Like you have no one that is following you on social media right now, right? It is much different than listing your property on Airbnb and in the first 24 hours, you've got your first 3 to 5 bookings or whatever it may be. Way different. You're building a brand. You have to build trust. You have to build rapport. You have to have the content that supports the story that you're trying to tell. And so I see often short-term rental owners try to use their listing photos that they've used on Airbnb, VRBO, on Instagram. And they're like, they're not doing anything for me. I'm like, okay, but you have to think about how people are using Instagram. And unless you're an interior designer, you need to have lifestyle content that conveys the narrative that you're trying to tell that resonates with your ideal guest avatar. And about 70% of that content needs to be video, because that's what social media prefers most often, especially on Instagram right now. Again, it's different. And like when you get to a certain point in this game, you have to be willing to make those investments in order to play and in order to stay competitive.
Absolutely. And that's why sometimes we'll even give out free stays in exchange for like videos and content so that we can actually use that across our brand, even for individual properties, but also for the company as well. And so videos have been popping off. Like we've been trying to get some really nice videos done. And so that's, I think, going to be a big trend moving forward. I'm so excited. I have somebody full time doing social media right now. So that's really exciting. And yeah, we're going to continue to have to develop that portion because I know it's going to be more and more important. It's really cool, really relevant to what's happening right now for us.
Is. And it's so interesting, Patrick, because the short-term rental industry, yes, vacation rentals have been around for years, right? But with everything that happened in 2019, 2020, and like the boom that we have seen across these various different markets, relative to other industries, the short-term rental space is still relatively young. And there's so much growth and opportunity and various different ways to stand out. And so when we're trying to work on, okay, we have this brand, we have this beautifully like well-designed property. Now, how do we market it effectively? Then there's like that whole side of the strategy that is largely untapped in this short-term rental industry. And it's very easy to stand out if your strategy aligns with obviously your ideal guest avatar, tells your brand narrative correctly, and is in general effective. But I would say influencer marketing is absolutely crucial, especially for companies like what you guys are doing, Patrick. And for those of you who are listening to this who have multiple properties in your portfolio, influencer marketing can absolutely be beneficial if structured correctly with the right partnerships and the right expectations and the right brand narrative in mind, right? Like you said, Patrick, we give anyone who's coming in to create content like very specific guidelines around what we're looking for. When you let an influencer go into the space and you're like free for all and they have no direction, and then you're like, I'm not happy with what the results were. Okay, that's because the partnership wasn't structured correctly, right? So again, so much of this comes back to taking ownership of the businesses that we're building and making sure that we're building them for longevity. The other thing, and I know that you're into this too, Patrick, is if you are thinking at some point about trying to sell You're trying to sell your boutique hotel. You're trying to sell your management company. You're trying to sell your short-term rental portfolio, whatever it may be. Anyone who's looking to buy a business is looking for these assets. They're looking for your social media assets, your email marketing list, because that adds tremendous value to the total sale. If I already have all of these different marketing assets that I can just take over and implement new strategy or whatever it may be, that is significantly more beneficial than having absolutely nothing and feeling like you have to start at ground zero.
Absolutely. And especially where we're headed right now with a lot of average homes and like standing out, and marketing's the way to do it. And I've seen people sell homes MLS for record numbers because they had a really good direct booking like email list. Oh yeah, these are all thousands of customers that have been at the place, and the retention, like you can literally email that list and just get bookings. And that is so powerful to people, because then they're not relying on Airbnb. They're not relying on these other platforms, OTAs. It's a powerful to have that list and the system in place that you could just continue running. Because I think we're, even though like we're going off of sales-based approaches to value these properties. For example, if your neighbor sells for 500,000 and it's very similar to what your house is, you're probably going to sell for 500,000. That kind of idea. But in this world, we're slowly getting to a point where, okay, yeah, like I would sell for 500,000, but now I'm also showing that I make $100,000 a year. On top of that, I have a direct booking platform, and I can get more and more money in the books, and that is more valuable. I'm willing to pay $100,000 to $150,000 more potentially for something like that.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing that I would say to all short-term rental owners, typically when you're thinking about, okay, again, like we've created this brand, we have the property, we have the properties, whatever it may be for you, and you have a direct booking site, one of the biggest misses that I see is not having an email marketing opt-in for those that are landing on your site. If you're going to use social media marketing in order to drive traffic to your direct booking site, but then you don't have some kind of an opt-in to capture those potential guests, you are literally losing out on thousands of dollars in potential bookings because of that one mistake. And it's very easy. Literally right before this call, I was working on this for the cabins. It's very simple to set up as long as you have a direct booking site that allows you and enables you to do this, but making sure that you're capturing emails of potential guests, then continuing to market to those potential guests until they book with you, as well as marketing to your past guests as well. And obviously tools like StayFi have allowed us as short-term rental owners to be able to do that very easily and seamlessly, which is super awesome. But it's like email marketing is great, low-hanging fruit. Social media is absolutely important for that brand recognition and the loyalty. And if you're using it correctly, then you should be driving traffic to your site, capturing those emails, and now you have multiple touch points, right? It takes multiple times for someone to see your brand, to have the recognition and have the trust that they need to make a booking decision with you. And you have to be responsible for leading them down that marketing funnel.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And with cabins on Cumberland, where you guys mentioned you guys have 3 cabins that are live. How many more cabins do you guys have until you're fully live 100%?
So we have 3 cabins that are live. We have a triplex that's launching next. So it's technically, it's one. It will sleep 18 as one unit, but it's 3 individual units as well. So that will technically be 6. And then we have 5 more. So we'll have 11 total. One of those is a cabin that we are focusing on accessibility. So trying to make it accessible for an ADA compliant and so on and so forth. So we're excited about that. And then once all of the cabins are done, we'll move on to the event venue. So that'll be one of the last buildings to be built on the development, as well as our pickleball courts and our playground for the kids. And then we have an indoor arcade gaming area, hangout area, lounge area that will be a part of the development too.
So cool. So it's running right now as is, and you're just adding all this stuff in as you're going. So it's a work in progress.
Yes, it is. It is a work in progress.
Yeah.
Because it's built on 9 acres, Patrick, I was so worried about launching this with like construction still going on. But the way that our development is structured and built, the front half is almost fully done being developed. And so now we're moving on to the back half. And so the construction really hasn't even been an issue for our guests. And we've had 0 complaints about that so far. We had one guest who was like, there are some nails. And I'm like, okay, but again, this is like in our listing description. It's in multiple messages that you receive before coming. Please be sure to check your tires and check the ground, so on and so forth. But No, it's been great. All of our cabins so far have had 5-star reviews. And I'm also very proud to say that since launching on June 1st of this year, we're recording this 2 months later, right? So it's now, wait, 3 months later, September. I'm like, what month are we in? We're already at 15% direct bookings. And that is due to our marketing efforts that we've started from social media, from email marketing, from Facebook group marketing, and then just like our marketing that we're doing as a partnership on our own pages as well. So I feel very proud of that fact, and it will only continue to grow for us.
So do you know exactly where those bookings are coming from? Which direct marketing effort that you're putting in? Is it from the Instagram page? Is it from the Facebook page? Is it from signs that you have bolted down at the property? Like, I'm curious, like where's it coming from?
So some of these are coming from like direct search results. So if you go on Google and you're like cabins in near Lake Cumberland, or if you're searching for places to stay near Lake Cumberland, SEO. Yeah. We're seeing a handful from there, and then the rest are largely on Instagram. I would say from a Facebook group perspective, we've maybe had 2 of our total direct bookings that have come from that. But again, where my efforts been focused, they've been focused on Instagram largely. And so that's where we're seeing the most of our value and benefit from that perspective so far.
Yeah. So Instagram, what's driving that more than anything? You said you don't do pictures. You did mention that you have some videos or some influencers that come in. Let's walk through maybe some of that content that you've been creating that's been really driving that traffic / getting that virality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So first and foremost, Patrick, I would say for us, it has been, of course, content and prioritizing video content for sure. Being able to show what you can do when you're coming down to Lake Cumberland, not only at our cabin development, but also in the area. And to be honest, it's like that story can be a little bit hard to share because it's like we're in the country, right? And so we really want, of course, our cabins to be the main focus, but we want to show people having a great time out on the lake, and so on and so forth. I would say what we've done a great job of is not necessarily focused on viral content, but on content that really resonates with our ideal guest avatar. And because of that, we've had multiple messages from people who have turned into guests now who are like, oh my gosh, I have my wedding and it's actually in this place near Kentucky. And I'm wondering if you guys are close by and can we come stay there after the night of our wedding? And that stay is coming up in October, and she booked direct through our Instagram account. We also are doing things like fall specials, or, hey, DM us for this specific code and you're going to save 10% when you book direct with us and book your stay with us. And so those that are causing people to engage with us, aside from just a comment, while those 2 components are great, Instagram content, we really want to focus on shares and we want to focus on saves. And then obviously the encouragement of get into our DMs so that we can have a conversation with you. So something that I do, Patrick, that's a little bit different than I feel like what many are doing on social media, which right now I think is just let me post this content or like this honestly terrible Canva graphic and see what happens. People aren't resonating with that. So again, A, content strategy, B, where are you leading people? So what are your calls to action? And so for us, when I'm encouraging someone to DM us DM us the word fall to receive this code, you can automate that and you can set it up through a platform called ManyChat, and you can do it in the comments and you can do it in DMs. And that's great. I send a personal voice memo. So I'll be like, hey, Steph, thanks so much for reaching out to Cabins on the Cumberland. I'm going to send you this code to use, but we would love to invite you. And if you have any special requests, we'd love to be able to accommodate. We're so happy to host, right? So I'm already showing what we value at Cabins on the Cumberland, which is like those personal relationships and thoughtful hospitality. And that's our goal. Like we really want to incorporate that and we want our guests to feel special. So I'm doing that starting on social media and creating that experience there. So we're doing those components. Of course, we are leveraging influencers. Now, I will say we haven't had any influencer stays yet, but I've done this with Hosted by the Webers for our co-hosting business in our own property and have seen its success. And so once we are a little bit more built out, we will heavily invest in influencer marketing because I know it will be tremendously beneficial for us. So we're going to line up a handful of influencer stays, creator stays for the fall. But for right now, I think my efforts are more focused on what can I do personally from a content perspective and from a general engagement perspective, and encouraging our own guests to share their experiences too. So inside of our cabins, we have our shop, stay, and win signs is what I call them. And this is in every cabin. So we actually created an entire swag store for Cabins on the Cumberland because when I go on vacation, I like to buy the sweatshirt or the hat or the ornament that says where I've been. And if we're instilling this as a place where families come for their tradition, I want them to wear it. And I also want them to do some free marketing for us on our behalf. So anyway, we have our shop page. And then we have stay, where they can use a specific code as a past guest to book their next stay and book direct. And then we have win, which is basically a monthly Instagram contest that we run. And so when our guests post and use our branded hashtag and tag us, they have an opportunity to win $100 to come back and stay again. So we're encouraging that user-generated content just from a guest perspective as well. So
I love that. I love the swag stuff. I couldn't agree more. And what's interesting about that, I have one client that's honestly in a good position financially. So their house, they're not really looking at profitability. They're more looking at how can I give the best experience possible to my guests. And it's an ultra cool property. It's like a playground, like in the boulders, beautiful. It's called Modwest Ranch. You guys can look it up. So what he does alongside with us is every time that he built this big tower thing that like you go inside and it's a gift shop on a short-term rental property. It's not a boutique hotel, and it's locked up. Like guests can't go inside. However, we will leave, depending on who's coming, we will leave a swag item for those guests. And I'm not talking about like just shirts. I'm talking about shirts, multiple kinds of shirts. I'm talking about RC cars. If it's a little kid and it's a little boy, there's like an RC car that's branded Modwest Ranch, or like their brand logo, which is "Get Your Cowboy On" at Modwest Ranch, or whatever, right? There's these cool little like slogans, or "Get Lost" is one of his slogans too, right? So it's got that "Get Lost" and it's got the cowboy on it or something like that. It's so cool. Everything you can think of, there's something branded for it. And so these kids that come in, imagine like showing up, you get your own little RC car. The girl gets, I don't know, a princess. I don't know there's just so much stuff. Like a cowboy, I don't know, like a cowgirl princess or something like that. And it's like the full experience is so cool. There's like arts and crafts on the property too, so you can make your own little arts and crafts. You can take that home. There's just like a lot of things for kids to do, and it's just super cool because you can take that stuff home. And so those are souvenirs from your stay at the property. And those little touches are just like what you need to really not only get your brand out there, because people start booking again. They're like, "Oh, I've seen you on the shirt," or whatever. Like that stuff happens. And so that's great retargeting. A lot of times, even the RC cars are not going to be used all the time, but maybe they'll be stationed up on a bookshelf or like on a shelf somewhere or whatever. And that's extra branding for you, right? So it's like stuff like that is just so smart to continuously drive people to come to your place.
It is.
As
it is. And I think sometimes, Patrick, too, because I know your audience is big on like, how do we measure ROI and how do we like take a look at the numbers and the effectiveness of this? And so when I get this question, I sometimes have a difficult time explaining. You cannot tell me the number of people that see me wearing my Cabins on the Cumberland hat to the gym that are now going and following us on Instagram. Obviously, I can see this data because I'm actually tracking it and I know who's at the gym. Mm-hmm. And so when I see that we're getting follows to our Cabins account, I'm like, I saw you working out with me at F45 this morning. Like, I obviously can track that, but it's in my head. It's not like actual data and numbers, but that's also the power of branding, is going, okay, where can our brand have a presence through some of these, like our swag shop and some of these branded items? And we may not be able to measure its effectiveness, but we certainly do know what it does for our brand loyalty. We certainly do know what it does for how our guests are actually feeling about their experience, because it's reflected in our reviews. And it's also reflected when that guest tells people about it on social media or tells people about it over dinner or books another stay with us, right? So sometimes I think that those efforts can be somewhat difficult to measure. But if you do any of your research on branding, think about any company that you buy from. What have they done? They've done a really phenomenal job at building their brand. This is why people say, I stayed at an Airbnb, or I had a terrible experience at an Airbnb, right? Like, it goes both ways. Mm-hmm. But Airbnb has built their brand and they've done a great job. And most of the products that you use on an everyday basis, like this is why I use this Owala water bottle, is my favorite water bottle. And I am so loyal to them. All of us have them. All of my kids, my husband, like we all use them. I'm very loyal. But it's because of the brand that they've built and my connection, and also the fact that this is the best water bottle ever, right? But again, every product that you use is like that. And so this is, again, coming back to the importance of it in the short-term rental industry and the huge opportunity that you have with branding your property and with marketing it outside of the OTAs.
That's awesome. And I do want to wrap this up towards the end. I'm going to ask you three
Okay.
questions and we're just going to go from here. First one is educational resource. What educational resource do you think was most helpful to get you to where you are today?
I am an avid investor in coaching and being mentored. So I invested in a business coach back in 2020 when it was my goal to become a full-time entrepreneur and leave my current 9 to 5 job that I had. And so she was my first business mentor that helped me be able to make that leap. And since that time, I have invested in numerous different mentors. In the short-term rental space, I've invested in Michael Elefante's BNB Investor Academy. I've also invested in the Thanks for Visiting gals and their membership as well. Of course, I've attended Natalie's Level Up Your Listing Summit. Patrick, I wanted to come to yours, but the dates interfered. But again,
Oh,
just like
good.
continuing to put yourself in those spaces. So that would be it for me.
Awesome. And special question for you. I just think of it on the spot, but I want to talk numbers. Let's talk numbers. I waited till the
I
end
love
for
it.
this because I knew you wanted to talk marketing, but let's talk numbers. What's that cabin acquisition look like? The mini resort.
Okay, so for us to purchase the cabins and the event venue, everything all in was 2.3 million. And we found a local bank to finance the deal, which was phenomenal. And there are 4 of us who are equal partners. It's all couples, so we all technically own 12.5%, but each couple owns 25%. And so we brought cash to the table. We each brought 25% of what our down payment was, which was right around $160,000 in cash. For us to be a part of that deal, we did a HELOC on our primary residence. So we used the equity in our primary home, which made my husband have a lot of anxiety, but like it's all working out and it's going to be fine. And then the bank gave us an 18-month interest only period as we are finishing out the build. And then we'll go into full repayment on that loan. And our goal is to just pay it off so that we can not have to worry about that huge payment anymore. But for us, from a numbers perspective, when we were running this deal, we had to go solely based off of what the short-term rentals and the cabins themselves could do, Patrick, because the bank was like, listen, this is the only like hard and fast number that you can give me. Everything else is like what you've seen or like the bit of research that you've done, but not necessarily specific to our industry or like our area, right? So we obviously, when we like pitched them this deal, I put together an entire proposal slide deck for them and did a whole video presentation and everything, but they would not let us use what my projections were for the wedding venue itself or for family reunions or like events, wellness retreats, and so on and so forth. So that being said, we ran our worst case, our best case, and then what we wanted to see happen numbers. And even in our worst case scenario, we were still profitable every month. For us, the deal made 100% sense. And not to mention the fact that they couldn't even take into account what our wedding venue numbers could be or could look like. And 2, for us, Patrick, this is where I feel like so often in the real estate space, when I say this, people are like, you're crazy. I would never do a deal with you. But for me, it's like a little bit about what do the numbers say? And then also what does my gut tell me? And what do I know I can do from a branding and marketing perspective? Because that is tremendously valuable and isn't always reflected in what the numbers show. I can only show what is in the area, which it was not a lot to compare to be honest.
I think that's huge. My business partner took down a deal that there was no other comps for. He took down a 7-bedroom deal and he put a lot of money into it. And guess what? He was all in at 1.5. He sold it for 2.1. Yep. Like he was doing 350,000 a year. There's no comps for that.
No.
But at the end of the day, you believe in the product you're building. You believe, I know people will pay for this. And I know it's a little bit of a gut feeling in some cases. And that's where the risk comes in. People that are too analytical get stuck on deals too. So there's a balance to both.
There's us too. The bank obviously was like, yeah, we trust you guys and it'll all work out and be fine. And the other thing too is we have 3 other couples who were like, this makes sense any which way we look at it. The sweet part about this deal for us, all of the other couples are absolutely phenomenal. Actually, one of the couples is our builder. So they owned the land and they're building all the cabins. And when we went down to look at the property last August, they took us out to dinner and they were like, yeah, so we want to be in on this. We want to be a part of it as well, which I thought was really cool and like also speaks volumes to what we're trying to build. And it's been really helpful to have our builder as a partner in this as well. All of the other partners said, listen, we're going to do our part to get this up, to get it running. to do whatever we need to do from that perspective, which we can talk about in a minute. But we want to be silent beyond that. And so our company is also managing it. So we also make our management fee and we're an equity partner in the deal. So it just, again, made sense. From a furnishings perspective, and this is one thing that if you're thinking about doing a boutique hotel or a micro resort, we are all fronting the cash for furnishings, for decor, like anything extra, the hot tubs that we're adding, etc. And that I certainly would do differently, but the bank was not willing. The bank that we were using was unwilling to incorporate that as part of the total loan. So that's something that I would do differently if I was structuring this deal again, because again, we want to think about hanging on to as much cash as possible, especially in the early years of the development and the growth and the brand and all the things. But it is what it is. So it's all working out. Yeah. It's not like we're trying to furnish 11 5-bedroom cabins, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, with that 2.1, I'm assuming that you're adding value because you're talking about all these things that you're adding. So it's going to probably force the appreciation up higher. Now, how much is it making currently versus how much you think it's going to make after it's done?
So I can tell you that with the 3 cabins that we have had live so far, June, we had 2 cabins live and we ended June at 6,000 that month, 7,000 that month. July, we ended at 9,000 that month. August took a little bit of a dip for us. I think we were back to 7,000. And that's with 3 cabins live. Add the other 8 that are still to come. And again, we're beyond what we need to be from a monthly expense perspective and cash flowing. So it's good.
Perfect. It's good to offset your expenses.
You have to do that. Have to do that. That's important.
Yeah. So awesome. And last question for the people that are like, wow, Steph just rocked my world. This is amazing. This is great what she was talking about, but how can I reach her? How do you recommend people get in touch with you?
So I would recommend that you come follow along on Instagram at The Weber Co. And that's just 1B. I do have a Facebook group where I do live trainings, offer free resources and so on and so forth. I have multiple different free resources available to you on theweberco.com as well. A couple of different marketing opt-ins and email marketing specific opt-ins too, if you're really curious about that. So many different things that are available to you, but I would love to connect. So please feel free, if you follow me, to send me a DM as well and let me know that you heard me on Patrick's show, and I would love to connect further.
Instagram girly. That's what it is. Just like the branding, that's where you're at 100%. So that's awesome. Thank you so much, Steph, for sharing. And you rocked it. Appreciate you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to the Patrick Real Estate Show. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a follow and leave us a 5-star review. Your support truly means a lot. And connect with Patrick in the show notes below. Until next time.